Police take statement from abused Indonesian maid. A 60-day state of emergency in Bangkok and surrounding areas. And the Olympic torch arrives in Volgograd in Russia.
Good evening. Hong Kong police and Labour Department officers went to a hospital in central Java this morning to take a statement from an Indonesian domestic helper. The woman is receiving treatment there for multiple injuries after being allegedly abused by her employer in Hong Kong. As Jenny Lam reports, she told the officers she'll return to the territory to help with the investigation into the case.
Hong Kong police and Labour Department officers were at the hospital in central Java this morning to take a statement from Oeana Sulistiansi. They said afterwards that Oeana appeared calm. The Hong Kong officers will discuss her condition with her doctor and interview witnesses who might be connected to the case. Oeana's mother, though, became so upset as her daughter recalled her experience in Hong Kong that she had to leave the room. The Hong Kong Labour officers will contact the employment agency that helped Oeana find her job in Hong Kong. Senior Inspector Lee Ka-yan from the Kwun Tong Crime Unit said Oeana had explained the circumstances under which she went to Hong Kong, how her employer tortured her and what her life was like while with the household. The former domestic helper told the officers she will come to Hong Kong once she has recovered to help with the investigation into her case. Labour officer Chen Ka-wing will focus on finding out whether the employer has broken labour laws, for example, by depriving Oeana of her rights, not paying her and not letting her take her days off. Indonesian authorities said the agency which referred Oeana to the job is willing to bear all her medical expenses. Jenny Lam, TVB News.
The suspect linked to the abuse case was taken to a flat in Cheung Kwan O as the police investigation continues. Vicky Kung has that story.
The 44-year-old suspect was taken by police to a flat at Beverly Garden in Cheung Kwan O this afternoon as part of the investigation. It's believed she previously lived here. This is also where Ariana was allegedly abused. We spoke to some domestic helpers who refused to appear on camera at Beverly Garden. They said they've never seen Ariana before and believe that's because she was always locked up in the very building behind me. Those who were willing to speak up welcomed the probe.
I'm so very happy, ma. Okay, but very good.
After staying there for about 30 minutes, officers then went to a flat in Tai Kok Tsui to collect evidence. The suspect is accused of abusing at least 2 Indonesian domestic workers at the 2 locations. Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying today promised to protect domestic helpers here in Hong Kong.
Hong Kong is a law-abiding society. We have good records of law and order, and we do not tolerate any offense against a person, especially offenses that involve causing bodily harm to the person, and this obviously covers foreign domestic helpers working in Hong Kong as well.
Among the requirements facing foreign domestic workers, they have to live in their employer's house. Some of those we talked to today called for changes, saying that could help prevent similar cases from happening again.
If we stay out, probably it's too much cost for us. But if we are live in with this kind of the family is very worse. If treat us like this is better. I think is we need to live out.
Vicky Kong, TVB News.
Turning overseas now, the Thai government announced a short while ago it'll impose a 60-day state of emergency in Bangkok and surrounding provinces from tomorrow. This follows mass anti-government protests that rocked the capital. Opposition demonstrators today targeted more government offices in Bangkok. Those who are against caretaker Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra marched to the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment. Protesters also threatened staff at the Department of Special Investigation working at a backup location in the capital. They forced workers to leave the building and suspend operations. The campaign by the opposition to shut down Bangkok is now in its 2nd week, but the number of demonstrators has declined in recent days. Turning to Ukraine now, and anti-government protesters clashed again with police in Kiev for the second night in a row. Police moved into a protest camp in the early hours today and were confronted by demonstrators. Officers responded with stun grenades, tear gas and rubber bullets. They dismantled some of the barricades set up on a street leading to government offices, but were then pushed back by the crowd. President Viktor Yanukovych has appealed for dialogue, but made no mention of possible concessions. He has refused to yield to the opposition's demand to sack his interior minister over heavy-handed police action against the protesters. The unrest was sparked last month by his decision to shun a trade pact with the European Union and turn towards Russia instead. The latest round of violent protests flared up 2 days ago after new laws that virtually outlaw all anti-government protests ran through Parliament. The opposition says the sweeping laws paved the way for a dictatorship.
The Olympic torch arrived in Volgograd on Monday, the Russian city where suicide bombings killed 34 people last month. This comes as Russia's counter-terrorism agency studies a video posted by an Islamic militant group that claims responsibility for the attack. Alan Buchner reports.
As the Olympic torch was carried through the streets of Volgograd, fears of more terrorist attacks grew following the video's posting. In it, a militant group from Dagestan identifies two men it claims were the suicide bombers. The men, speaking in Russian, warn Russian President Vladimir Putin that if he holds the Olympics, they'll give him a present. They added there would also be presents for tourists who come. Dagestan is a predominantly Muslim republic in Russia's volatile North Caucasus, about 500 kilometers east of Sochi, the host city of the 2014 Winter Games. Last week, Putin vowed that security would be extremely tight for the Olympics and urged Russians not to show weakness or fear. He said terrorists would notice that and it would help them achieve their goals. But a Russian security analyst in Volgograd questions Putin's plans of putting more and more troops in Sochi.
The number of troops is not the issue. The problem is how to gather intelligence, how to disseminate this intelligence properly between different departments. And when you put so many troops on the ground, you might get some problems with coordination of all these people.
He also points out that the deadly terror attack last December 29th was in the train station in Volgograd and not in Sochi.
There's two people on this video, they promised a surprise, not specifically in Sochi, but just for Russians and for the tourists and for the visitors to the Olympics. So they never tried to specify the place where they might strike. So that's why everybody should be concerned.
The Winter Olympics in Sochi are scheduled to run from February 6th to the 23rd. Alan Buchner, TVB News.
Iran is no longer invited to take part in talks to be held in Switzerland tomorrow on Syria's future. The controversy over whether there should be an Iranian presence in the talks highlights the difficulty in negotiating an end to the conflict between the Syrian government and the opposition.
How to stop 3 years of fighting and the humanitarian crisis affecting millions of Syrians. Tomorrow, dozens of countries will attend the Geneva II conference in the Swiss resort of Montreux to try to end the civil war and map out Syria's future. But the role of Iran, a key supporter of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime, is under scrutiny. On Sunday, United Nations Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon invited Tehran to attend the meeting after Iranian officials assured him they supported the conclusion of the Geneva I conference back in 2012. But the invitation has now been withdrawn.
Iran, despite assurances provided orally to the Secretary-General, has made a disappointing public statement that suggests Iran does not accept that the basis for the Geneva conference, as defined by the two initiating states, the Russian Federation and the United States, is the full implementation of the 30th of June 2012 Geneva Communique, including the establishment by mutual consent of a transitional governing body with full executive powers.
The Western-backed opposition group Syrian National Coalition has now confirmed its presence in tomorrow's talks. It had threatened to stay away if Iran was allowed to attend the upcoming conference.
Iran has not satisfied the minimum requirement for this invitation. We wanted to make sure that this invitation is withdrawn before continuing with our efforts to attend and participate fully in Geneva II conference.
Russia, one of Syria's strongest allies, called the decision to rescind Tehran's invitation a mistake.
The withdrawal of an invitation to Iran will not help to support the efforts of the Islamic world in fighting terrorism.
And while Lavrov did not see it as a catastrophe that Iran won't attend the talks, he said all the confusion in the past 2 days did nothing to boost the standing of the UN.
Meanwhile, a landmark deal aimed at easing concerns over Iran's nuclear program has now taken effect. Tehran yesterday unplugged banks of centrifuges involved in its most sensitive uranium enrichment work, prompting the US and European Union to partially lift sanctions against the country. The United Nations nuclear watchdog confirmed Iran had halted its most disputed nuclear activity. The International Atomic Energy Agency said Tehran had also begun diluting its stockpile of uranium enriched to such a level that took Iran closer to possibly producing fuel for an atom bomb. Under the deal, Iran and the international community should try to seal a final accord within 6 months. Washington and its European allies say that agreement would ensure the Islamic Republic cannot build a nuclear weapon.
And still to come in our news tonight. Non-emergency surgery postponed at public hospitals. A call for tax incentives for the middle class. And signals from a comet-chasing European spacecraft.